All right, guys, I think we could probably go ahead and get started. It's 6:31. We want to be respectful of all your time, and I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Danielle Watson, and I'm the website and social media manager for the Preservation Resource Center of New Orleans. And whether you're joining us from across the country or you're right here in New Orleans, we're really glad that you're here to learn more about our newest travel experience, the New Orleans Holiday Heritage Tour. The Preservation Resource Center here, our mission is to preserve New Orleans historic architecture, cemeteries, neighborhoods, and cultural identity. And while many people know us for our advocacy work, our educational programs, and of course, our annual holiday home tour, another important part of our mission is helping people experience New Orleans in meaningful ways that really deepen their appreciation for our incredible city. And that's what this tour is all about. It's not just about sightseeing or a holiday vacation. It's a really thoughtfully curated experience that's going to open doors to people, places, our traditions that most visitors never have the opportunity to experience. And throughout the itinerary, you're going to find exclusive access, private events, remarkable conversations, and unforgettable meals, all of which are carefully planned so you can simply just enjoy the magic of New Orleans during the holiday season. It's an incredible itinerary that Russell and Sage have put together. And I was looking at the guys' bios today, and it occurred to me that this really is the work of two storytellers backed by a preservation organization coming together to tell the story of New Orleans and what we're all about during the holidays. So, the Preservation Resource Center, we're bringing decades of relationships with homeowners, historians, preservationists, and other cultural leaders throughout New Orleans. And those connections allow us to create these experiences that you're just not going to get as the average traveler. You're not going to find this on TripAdvisor. There's no Google search or Chat GPT prompt you can put in to get these experiences. And that's what makes this so valuable and so special. And of course, we have our two amazing storytellers who bring it to life. And I say storytellers because they've both worked in film. They have a background in film, so they really are. So some of you may already know Russell through our tours here in New Orleans. He is a ninth generation Cajun, a licensed New Orleans tour guide, and someone who's incredibly passionate for sharing the history, architecture, and culture of just Louisiana. He's spent years developing meaningful travel experiences, and together with his wife, has lovingly restored a historic home in Algiers Point. So preservation just isn't his profession; it's in his everyday life. He loves it, and it shows. And I have the pleasure of working with him every single day. Um, and I'm also really excited to introduce Sage, the founder of Project Por Amor. So I've actually had the opportunity to travel with Sage twice now to Cuba, and I can honestly say that those trips were life-changing for me. The amount of detail that he pours into these, and heart and soul, and making sure that you really connect with the culture and the people, it's fantastic. And that's certainly no exception for this trip. But to tell you a little bit more about Sage, he has spent more than 2 decades creating immersive cultural experiences around the world. His background is incredibly unique. He is an accomplished composer, and I'm sure you can see his instruments in the background, whose work has been heard on Netflix, HBO, Amazon Prime, and many other platforms. But he's also built a career bringing people together through travel, music, and storytelling. His philosophy is that the best way to understand a place is through the people who call it home. And I think you'll see that truly reflected throughout the itinerary here. So, together, Russell and Sage have designed this amazing holiday experience that goes beyond the guidebook. It's an opportunity to experience New Orleans through the people who preserve its traditions, tell its stories, and keep its culture alive. That's us. So tonight they're going to walk you through the itinerary, share some of the exclusive experiences that make this trip so special, and answer any questions you may have. We've already had some really great questions already. Of course, I'll be dropping things in the chat. So if you have your chat open, look for those links. That'll give you even more detailed information. And again, I just want to thank you all so much for spending part of your evening with us. We're really excited that you're here, and we hope you'll leave tonight feeling inspired to experience New Orleans in a whole new way. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to amazing, wonderful, stupendous, excellent, our guides, Russell and Sage.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. That was amazing. Wonderful introduction. Really appreciate it. So thank you everyone for joining us. We have a good bit of folks. We have 12 now that have all joined us into the Zoom. So hello, everyone. I'm Russell and uh, put these trips together with my partner Sage, who works with Project Por Amor. And we'll just get into this thing. So Daniil already did a great job of kind of saying who is the Preservation Resource Center. We've been an advocate in New Orleans for over 50 years, preserving the historic buildings and cemeteries and so much wonderful advocacy and education, teaching people how to fix their windows, making sure people can have roofs over their homes with revival grants, and lots of other wonderful things here at the PRC. Um, so we'll continue on with the slide, Sage. Do you want to say anything right now?
Well, I'll just go really quickly. Daniil said it beautifully, but Project Por Amor is a small artist-run tour operator, and we've been producing tours and specializing in Cuba, Iceland, Sicily, Morocco, New Orleans, and a few other places for 19 years. And we out of all the tours we do, we think that New Orleans is one of the deepest wells of culture you'll find anywhere, and that's a hard bar when you're also with other parts of the world, like Cuba and other places that have so much culture. But I mean, New Orleans is just an incredible city. It's been a lot of fun. I've been going to New Orleans for Jazz Fest. For about over 10 years, and so we just really want to put together the most meaningful and rare experience one could have, and so that's what our mission is here. But Russell, why don't you talk a little bit about the next part?
Yeah, so is December a good time to visit New Orleans? So first off, just to say thank you all again for having interest in coming to New Orleans. Thank you having interest in the Preservation Resource Center. Thank you for having interest, especially in coming to New Orleans around the holidays. So the holidays are one of the really truly special times in New Orleans. I've worked in tourism here for about 20 years, and I'm always shocked. Right around the time of this trip, about 2 weeks before Christmas, I run into so many people from around the country that planned a trip to New Orleans, sometimes for a football game, sometimes for a conference or whatever it is. And they just are always stunned. They say, we had no idea of how New Orleans decorates and celebrates the holidays, from running into groups of revelers, leaving a brunch in the French Quarter, to walking through one of our beautiful lobbies like you'll see right here at the Ritz-Carlton. And just a truly magical place. But some other things are pretty great, that it's some of the best weather. You have mild, beautiful weather in the 60s, wonderful, just beautiful streets to walk down, historic French Quarter. We're going to be seeing a bunch of different stuff we'll get into in a minute, but also really low tourist crowds. That's why we've been able to get access to some of the places we're going to, is because a lot of people, businesses are kind of, shutting down for the holidays. Conferences aren't happening. No one wants to bring, 20,000 people around the country 2 weeks before Christmas. So we get a lot of great access to a lot of places we're going to. And it's just a really special, magical time with great weather. And I'm just excited that y'all are interested in sharing that with us. So here we go. We have 6 days inside the real New Orleans, five holiday celebrations. and that's just a minimum. One thing me and Sage really focused on this trip is we want to have live music every day, and usually special live music just for our group. So there's going to be multiple chances to see live music every day. If there's an evening open, then we usually have suggestions. It's like we're going to end right around this spot, but then we kind of, and we'll be going usually doing this, and we usually sometimes split up. If folks want to go back to the hotel, we'll make sure that happens. And then if other folks want to go out to a dinner kind of on the night on your own, we'll have something suggested, and then we'll have suggested music every evening, every time that there's not something on the itinerary, we're going to have suggested music, but we're also building special performances into the itinerary every day, and we're super excited about those. So our overall theme is just kind of touching on the rich Creole and Cajun holiday heritage. We'll talk all about the words Creole and Cajun once y'all are here. We're going to end the trip with a Réveillon dinner that we'll talk about in a couple of slides. We're going to be going up the river to the bonfires along the levee, which is a 200-year-old Cajun tradition. That's also going to be part of a gumbo cook-off where there's going to be 100 local chefs cooking gumbo all on there in like a fairgrounds in the pots. You're gonna be able to try all the gumbo you could ever want. And if you get tired of gumbo, there's also gonna be some other food too. And then just going to get to participate in the PRC's holiday home tour and a lot of really special talks with different culture bearers, civil rights icons, and activists. And we'll talk about more of those in a second. But that's kind of the theme is just kind of like Daniil said, is we're trying to, every single thing we put in the itinerary has to have a little added bonus. It's kind of we call plus. So if someone walks off the street, can they do this? No. They're not going to be able to get into these places. They're not going to be able to get into these places with the speakers and the musicians that we've all aligned together. So that's really what makes this trip unique. So we're going to be based at the Henry Howard Hotel, which is right on the edge of the Garden District, one block off historic St. Charles Avenue, where the St. Charles streetcar rolls up and down, the oldest operating passenger railway in the world, going back to 1835 when it was pulled by mules. And this is a boutique hotel. It's just 15 rooms, and we're going to have the entire hotel reserved for our group. It was designed by the architect Henry Howard in 1867, and it's had an interesting history as a private home. Then it was divided into apartments. Then it kind of became a flop house in the 70s. Some people bought it in the 80s and lovingly restored it, and they use it as kind of a private home. And then the current owners bought it 10 years ago and turned it into this hotel, and it's kind of their precious baby. And one of their favorite things is the holiday season when they pull out all their Christmas decorations and put a big tree in the lobby. And when the general manager, Miss Suzanne, was telling me about that, I was like, this is the perfect home for our trip because they love the holiday season, and that's what the theme of our trip is. But a wonderful little hotel right in the historic Garden District on Britannia. So I talked a few about these, and we're going to get into them a little more in depth, but just a real festive way to celebrate. Our closing Réveillon dinner is going to be in Antoine's private Rex room, which is just a beautiful room celebrating the history of the kings and queens of Mardi Gras. And then I'll talk more about Réveillon in a second, but the bonfires up the Mississippi, we'll get into those. The holiday home tour, you're going to be walking through the Garden District, seeing about 6 to 7 homes, all decorated in holiday splendor. A City of Light, we're going to have Celebration in the Oaks, which is going to be, I'll talk about it when we kind of get to it on another slide, but we'll also be doing a special lobby tour. We just saw the hotel lobbies. One right behind Daniil is the Hotel Monteleone. And so lovely. And we're going to be going to the Ritz-Carlton, which is actually in the lobby of one of our old department stores. And I'll be telling you the history not only of these buildings and how they've been repurposed, but also the history of these lobby displays. And that'll just be a fun little hour. We're going to pop around to 4 or 5 different lobbies, but you'll learn about what makes these buildings unique, what makes these hotels unique, and how they tie into the history of New Orleans. We already mentioned live music. And then last is community, that we really like to treat these trips as we're all making new friends. We're all traveling together. We have 3 folks from our last trip we did 6, 7 months ago joining us on this holiday trip because they had such a wonderful time. And I think they've traveled with Sage and Project Por Amor a number of times. And it's really about getting to know each other, getting to know the city, and doing it together. And it's just, nothing better than sharing a meal together to get to know each other. I think Mr. Anthony Bourdain said that.
Mhm.
So what is a Réveillon dinner and why did Creole families fast till midnight? I have a cameras over there. Yeah, feast at midnight. So Réveillon dinners go back to the real old days of colonial New Orleans when it was primarily Catholic, still is primarily Catholic, but you would basically fast on Christmas Eve, an old tradition in the Catholic Church. And so then you would go to midnight mass. Now you haven't eaten all day, and now you're going to midnight mass. You're going to hear mass for an hour or 2 hours, and then you go home, and that's when Réveillon starts. So that's when you pull out all the food, all the drinks, and you have that celebration. Because for one, it's the first time you've eaten in over a day, but also it's just celebrating Christmas Day. It's celebrating all that family traditions and these Creoles, which are the original people of New Orleans. And the Creoles would basically celebrate all into Christmas Day, and it would just carry on this party. Now, as New Orleans and Louisiana became part of America, they started adopting more of the American Christmas traditions. And those traditions are similar to what we all know today. So Réveillon kind of faded away because people weren't fasting. They weren't putting together these elaborate dinners at, 2 a.m. But as you see right here on the slide, it says by the 1940s, the tradition had all but vanished. But then in the 1990s, people started talking about Réveillon again and saying, what if we brought it back as kind of more of a celebration in a restaurant at a normal kind of time to eat? But you bring back a lot of those specialties that were on these menus, like raw and roasted oysters, turtle soup, gumbo, shrimp remoulade, grillades and grits, and cafe brûlot, which is one of my favorite coffee drinks, which is a whole flame demonstration right after dinner. And it's fantastic. Um, so if you like a little coffee and you like a little liquor after your meal, Cafe Brûlot's for you. But what's an old Creole tradition? And so Réveillon has kind of come back and it's been reimagined where more people can experience it. If anyone ever wants to start it at 2 a.m., I'll be there for you. My wife won't let me do it. She says I'm crazy, but I bring it up every year that we should do a proper Réveillon at 2 a.m. But we're going to do ours at 7 on the last night. It'll be a little more civil so we could all be in bed for 2 a.m. So the bonfires up on the Mississippi. So this is an old Cajun tradition that sometimes people say is all about lighting the way for Papa Noel, so he could find the way to your chimney back in the old Cajun country in the Creole cottages and on the farms. And they also said it was kind of a way to light the way to Christmas Eve Mass, to midnight Mass, before there was electric lights. You would follow these bonfires that people would build to find your way to the church. So a lot of the communities up the river still honor this tradition, especially on Christmas Eve. But so we don't have to drag everyone up the river on Christmas Eve, a great thing that the communities do up there is they do a festival of the bonfires 2 weeks before Christmas, which is what we're going to be going to, where they light some bonfires along the levee, but then they combine it with a gumbo cook-off where all the chefs from out in Cajun country all come out and they try to outcook each other with all these great gumbos we're going to be able to try. And they have Cajun and Zydeco music playing on a band up the river. So it's going to be a fantastic time where we get to experience all this. And right before we go to the Festival of the Bonfires, we're actually going to go to Reserve, where they build massive wooden structures. And I think it's on the itinerary. Daniil, if you want to drop the itinerary in the links, you'll see a picture of a giant frog if you go to this event on the itinerary. And that frog is all built out of wood. And these communities build these for months. But what we're going to do is we're going to get to go see them built before they burn them on Christmas Eve. So we're going to see the beautiful structures before they light them on fire. And then we're going to go to the festival, which will be a little bit downriver from there for the gumbo cook-off.
Are we on a boat or a bus?
We're going to be on a bus, and the bus will drop us off at the festival, and then we're going to participate in the festival, and then we'll probably get on the bus and go down to the levee to see the bonfires. If I would love to take a boat, it would just take far too long.
Okay.
So here we go, inside the Garden District's grandest homes. And this was really one of the main reasons we decided to set this trip in December because the PRC has done this wonderful holiday home tour for pretty much 50 years, where we get access to Garden District homes, mansions, places that normal people don't get access to. And they're all decorated for the holidays. And you get to roam around the Garden District. We have a wonderful holiday boutique and Christmas market. And it's just kind of a wonderful celebration of the holidays over 2 days. But what our group's going to be doing is we're going to be starting at a selected home early before anyone else does. We're going to be having a little reception, meeting the homeowners, and then you're all going to be able to go experience the holiday home tour at your own pace. If you want to sit in one house and talk to the owner for 3 hours, y'all can. If you want to see all of them and then go to the Christmas boutique and shop for 3 hours, you can. If you want to just see half of them and go back to the hotel and nap, you can. And then right after the holiday home tour at 2 o'clock, Chef Jason Goodenough is going to open his house in the Garden District and welcome all of us in. You could kind of trickle in as you want. There's going to be a piano concert and cocktails. And then at 3 o'clock, we're going to all be seated at his house for the Feast of the Seven Fishes, which is a Sicilian American traditional kind of Christmas Eve feast. Because in some Catholic traditions, you wouldn't eat meat on Christmas Eve, similar to how the old Creoles would fast. It kind of evolved in some Italian culture to where you wouldn't eat meat until you would have this Feast of the Seven Fishes. And he's an award-winning chef who's welcoming us into his home and is going to prepare this meal for us. So it's going to be a pretty special Saturday right in the middle of the trip. So this ties into what we're going to be doing that night is going to Celebration in the Oaks, which is a big kind of festival in City Park that goes back over 30 years. 800-year-old oak trees decorated in light. You get to wander around. They have all kind of wonderful displays. One of my favorite is the Cajun Night Before Christmas, which tells you the story of the Cajun Night Before Christmas with light ups, alligators pulling old Saint Nick, Papa Noel to the Cajun cottage. But it's just a wonderful celebration of the holidays. Me and my wife brought our daughter last year and just had such a wonderful time walking around. It's so much to see that you could just get lost. And we're going to be meeting with the lady who actually started it in the 1980s. She's going to be welcoming our group and kind of giving us a little private introduction that most people would never get. So that's going to be our little special bonus for Celebration in the Oaks. I don't think I told Sage that till just now.
Yeah, amazing.
So how do you hear the real New Orleans? This is something that was really kind of passionate about when we kind of set out to lay out this trip. Sage, do you want to talk about the musicians a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I love many of the parts of New Orleans that come together, things we've been talking about, architecture, food, traditions, and all these things. But some of the things that the music, as you all know, just creates this. For me, it's the magic of the city, just the level of musicianship, the amount of it, the number of great musicians. We were on our last tour. We did a private home concert, living room concert of this musician who's I think around 70 years old and has been living in New Orleans his whole life. And he was talking to another colleague of his who's a musician around the same age, and they were commenting on how today New Orleans has a better music scene than they've ever seen it in their lives. And we always hear about Dixieland and Louis Armstrong and the birth of jazz and all that really great stuff. But sometimes you think that's just part of the past. The thing is New Orleans is a living, breathing city and hub and still innovator of music, of American music. And going into it and seeing it and experiencing it in small, whether it's someone's living room, whether it's the chef's house, or we go to musicians are coming to play for us at one of our meals, or we go to a club, whether it's a famous club or even some of the best dive bars in New Orleans are the best concerts that I've ever seen there. I mean, New Orleans is like a music festival every night on a Monday night in December or February or any time. It's like most cities will have this level of activity during their biggest festival, and that's just a normal time for New Orleans. So we make a big point of experiencing that in as many different settings as possible. Because a place like New Orleans, music is just part of life. It's not always a formal thing that you have to get a ticket and plan around. It's just something that's happening. It's like it's coming out of the faucet, and so these are particular we also there's so many different types of music and such a diversity that we try to bring together blues music, zydeco, Cajun, jazz, and they have a great opera tradition. They have great classical music. They have great country and so many different kinds that are fused together and still surviving, still being played in their pure forms and changing and innovating. So we kind of get as much into that as we can.
And these artists are pretty great. Our open reception at the Henry Howard is going to be Mike TZ Torregano on piano, fantastic musician. And then the next day at lunch, we're going to have Eric Merchant and Chloe Marie. Eric Merchant's a great guitarist, and Chloe Marie is hilarious. She's from Lafayette. She plays the fiddle. She's as Cajun as you could get. And the great thing between hearing Chloe Marie and all these musicians is when they're in these private settings that we're going to be in. My favorite thing is sometimes in between the music, it's the stories they tell. And Chloe tells great stories about the music she wrote, and it just really draws you into what you're about to hear. And they all do that. And that's what really makes it special for these performances. And then you get to meet them. They're just going to be in the room with us, hanging out, talking story, and playing these musics and telling you the stories that influence their songs. And it's also on here is Bruce Sunpai Barnes, who's kind of a modern day Renaissance man. He was a park ranger for 32 years, retired park ranger, NFL player for the Kansas City Chiefs, speaks the French Creole language, and is an amazing Zydeco uh, musician. He's actually up in New York playing right now. We texted with him earlier. And I'll talk about him a little more in a second, but he's going to be doing a great presentation for us on the Creole language and an escaped slave named Juan San Malo, who was called a Maroon, who has a very interesting story, and he's going to be telling his story through song. So it's really, really powerful stuff from back in the late 18th century. So that's going to kind of tie into here, which is some of these are some of my favorite parts of the itinerary is Dr. Leona Tate, who was one of four little girls in the 60s to integrate the schools here in New Orleans. Her and two other girls integrated McDonough 19. And during that time, the NAACP, they reached out to people all across the country and asked them to write Christmas cards to these little girls because they knew they were having a hard time integrating these schools. So people all over the country wrote Christmas cards to Dr. Tate, to Ruby Bridges, and the two other little girls. And they're all saved at the Historic New Orleans collection. So Dr. Tate has selected some of them that mean the most to her. One of them I saw was written by another little girl from Massachusetts, all in her own hand. And she's going to share those cards with us at the Historic New Orleans collection and also tell her story, how she went from being a young 6 year old integrating these schools in the 60s to eventually now she owns the school McDonough 19 and it's a learning center and it's named after her and the two other girls that integrated it. So we're going to hear her whole story. And then next is the Descendants Project, where we will be visiting right before the bonfires. And I actually went there this morning to meet with Joy Banner, one of the founders. It's her identical sister, Jo, and they founded the Descendants Project pretty much because industrial company wanted to put a grain terminal right next to their historic town, and it was just a little small town, but they are descendants of the enslaved. And those descendants still live in that small town. And this grain terminal wanted to build 50 silos, including one as tall as the Statue of Liberty. And it would have pretty much decimated their town. And they were able to fight to stop it. And one of the ways they were able to fight to stop it was using the historic plantations, plantations that, were lots of causes of suffering for their people, but now help tell the story of their people. And since those plantations are now historic, they were able to use the historic designation of those plantations to protect their community today. So we're going to hear that whole story at Woodland Plantation, which they now own, which was also the site of the largest slave revolt in the United States. I was in the room where it started this morning, and just a fantastic lady, fantastic activist, but so down to earth, and just is really excited to welcome our group. And they don't even open their plantation until January at the earliest. So they're welcome. We're going to be the first people to kind of go and hear these stories from her. in the rooms where these things happened. And when I told her some of the other things that were on the itinerary, she actually, in her presentation today, mentioned Dr. Leona Tate. And I said, "Oh, we're going to be actually meeting with Dr. Tate." She said, "Y'all are seeing Dr. Tate?" And I said, "Yeah, it's actually the day before we come to Woodland." And then on her shelf, I saw Sunpai's book, Le Caire Creole, which is basically tells the story of what he's going to be telling us in person while he plays the accordion. And she says, "Y'all are seeing Sunpai too?" And she was like, "I want to come on this trip because y'all are doing all the best things that are on my bookshelf right here." So that was great to hear this morning. And then lastly, we have Professor Richard Campanella, who's written like 30 books on New Orleans. He's basically the New Orleans expert, Tulane professor. And I think our last trip in March, which was our first New Orleans trip, it was a highlight of every single person's list was that Campanella just nailed it, telling you the history of New Orleans. And for us on this trip, he's going to be telling the story of architecture, of how all the Creole cottages, the shotgun houses, the Creole townhouses, how they tell the story of New Orleans through the people that live there and the people that built them. So that's going to be right here at the PRC where me and Daniil are right now. So y'all are going to get to come to our headquarters, which is an old showroom from a foundry from 1852. So even the building we're in right now has a lot of history. But these are all really exciting parts.
One thing I'm going to jump in and just acknowledge it's 7 o'clock Central Time, so we're at the official end of the webinar. But uh, and we understand if you have to leave, we'll keep going as fast as we can to finish it, and invite you to stay till the end. But understand too that it's the official end of the time that we had said it was going to be.
Yeah, and I think we've covered a good bit of it, so we'll kind of go pretty quicker. We've already talked about a lot of these. Antoine's Rex Room for our farewell Réveillon dinner the last night. Feast of the Seven Fishes and Chef Jason Goodenough's home. Tableau is where Eric Merchant and Chloe Marie are going to be playing in their courtyard, which is actually the home of our last Spanish governor. And it's right across the street from the Cabildo, where the Louisiana Purchase document was kind of ratified. We're going to be going to Dookie Chase, which we haven't even really got the chance to talk about, but that's the restaurant of Chef Leah Chase, who, if you've ever seen the Disney movie The Princess and the Frog, is kind of based on her story. But she was cooking in her kitchen till she was 97. And the really special thing about Dookie Chase was during the civil rights era in the 60s, she would welcome the Freedom Riders. She welcomed Martin Luther King. She welcomed Malcolm X all into her upstairs kind of hidden dining room where they could meet and plan the Montgomery bus boycott, the Baton Rouge bus boycott. So when I think she served gumbo to 4 U.S. presidents. And when she met them, she usually says, "I changed America one bowl of gumbo at a time." So we're going to be going there and meeting with Mr. Ron Boucher, who painted the mural of all these historical figures in that upstairs little room where we're going to get to go see. And it kind of features this whole kind of civil rights activism that Miss Leah Chase had. And we'll be meeting her granddaughter there, who will also be welcoming us to the restaurant. We have Mr. John's Steakhouse, which is right around the corner from the Henry Howard, kind of a classic old school New Orleans Creole steakhouse, one of the favorites of the Manning family. If you've heard of, Peyton, Eli, and Archie Manning, they grew up right down the street on First Street. So when you walk in, you're going to see pretty much every NFL player you've ever thought of or seen, Jerry Rice to Joe Montana, all with pictures right on that wall. Fantastic steak. We already talked about the gumbo. We're gonna have breakfast every day at the hotel. Miss Suzanne is really excited about what she's preparing for y'all. And the Napoleon House, which I wish I could talk about for 20 minutes, but fantastic historic building in the French Quarter, was the home of one of New Orleans' old mayors, was supposed to be the kind of refuge for Napoleon when some old Creoles were going to go rescue him from the island of St. Helena and bring him to New Orleans. But we're going to be upstairs in a private room with Sun Pai doing his Creole musical storytelling with us. But they're known for their moufaletta, which is a sandwich invented here in New Orleans. They have great red beans and rice, and they're known for their Pim's cups. And I got a whole 20-minute spiel on Napoleon House. Y'all will hear when you get here.
So the people, one of the best parts about this tour is we've talked a lot about all the history and music and architecture and all these formal things, but it really, in the end, the best part is the people you meet in New Orleans, all walks of life, all different types of, interesting people that make up New Orleans. And then as well as the people who go on this trip, it's such a kind of elevated trajectory of one incredible experience after the other that typically on these tours, a lot of people come in as strangers. Some people know each other a little bit going in, but we all leave as best friends because it's just quite a cool experience, and it bonds people a lot. And on the tours, we always have people keeping in touch afterwards. They keep in touch by email, or they have monthly lunch, or they we do reunions. There's all different types of ways, and that's really an important part of it. So these are all people similar, I assume, to you guys who are interested in preservation and culture and all these things. And so it's a lot of like-minded people. I'm going to just go quickly through. There's an endless amount of comments people have about the tours. Uh, all 5-star reviews. Honestly, it's and there's you can see on the website and other places where that's listed that just the technical parts of the trip. If you go, is if you share a room, if you go as a couple or with a friend or family member or someone like that, the price is $4,875 per person. If you have your own room and are in a single, it's $5,960. Just because the cost of the hotel room is all within that one person's price cost. And if you live in New Orleans, which actually a third of the people signed up so far, maybe even more than a third, are actually locals. They're people who live in New Orleans, which I think is pretty amazing that we're doing a tour that's in normally when we do tours, people are traveling somewhere they've never been before or not been much, but we get a lot of people who live in New Orleans and experience the city every day for years or decades or their entire lives. And I think like, wow, this is a really cool experience of New Orleans that I would like to have, even though I live here. So I think that says a lot about the trip. And a lot of people we get who went to Tulane University and moved away, or people just love New Orleans and just want to come back and reconnect with the city in a way they haven't before. But the payment schedule is when you register at $750 per person, which is a non-refundable deposit, unless we have to cancel the tour, obviously we'll give you the money back. But if you cancel, we have to put that money right into the hotels and reserving, making payments to which we have a timeline where we're organizing this tour. So that's why that's not refundable. We do recommend and give you information on trip insurance, third-party insurances, lots of options where you can also get as well and there's a whole terms and conditions, but I'm going through this part really quickly now, and we can answer questions if you have them. There's 24 spaces total, so we're not going to let it get too big. Flights, our books are not included because people are coming from all different places. Some people aren't coming on a flight, and other people are like to fly first class or use points or have their favorite airlines and stuff. Another thing I'm going to go back and mention about when I was saying there's a lot of locals on the tour. The reason I was saying that is because we also have a local price. If you do live in New Orleans and you can go on the trip you don't need to obviously stay in the hotel or have the breakfast. So I believe it's $1,000 off the double occupancy price. If you live in New Orleans, what's included? Pretty much everything is included. You won't really be spending any more money once you get there. There are 2 dinners on your own, so you would spend money on that. However, there's so much food. The reason we don't have all the dinners is because it just becomes too much food, and a lot of people like a little bit of break from so many different great menus and stuff like that, and big meals that we're eating. And also, it's nice to get time to just explore New Orleans by yourself or with whoever you came on the trip with, and go to maybe a restaurant a good friend had recommended that you want to try out that we're not going to. And the flights, of course.
We'll also have suggested stuff for those nights too, and it'll either be me or Sage taking at least usually it's half the trip, if not more, onto maybe a dinner close to where we ended that day's programming or to some suggested music. So there's always an option to be with one of us if you want to continue and not go out and do stuff on your own.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. And if we go out to see music at night, there's a great concert happening that we heard about. We recommend everyone see. We'll go out with you and be with you the whole time. But then it's not expensive, but then you just get your own, drinks or whatever you want in your own entry. A lot of times the concerts in New Orleans are actually free and the musicians just have like a hat where you put a tip into. But really we make it all super easy and take care of everything. So essentially it's kind of just a magic carpet ride. You get on, you go all over the place. You don't have to think, you don't have to stress out about anything. You don't have to, secure reservations or worry about any of that. You just show up and we give you also all the guidance on, getting flights and when to arrive, and we pick you up at the airport and we take you back, and we're with you the entire time of the program, and then also really 24 hours for things that are in the program. We're going to keep looking at spontaneous, really cool activities to take advantage, and concerts, things happening in the city, or going to the Cabildo or something where a cool site that isn't part of the program, because we have some free time as well. So it's so that's just for the sake of ending this, not too late. We would love to talk more, answer any questions. We can stay on here now as long as anyone wants to have ask questions, as well as these are our phone numbers here and our email addresses, and you can reach out to us anytime, and we would love to answer more questions, curiosities, concerns, anything else that you might have.
And if y'all want to look at in the chat, Daniil dropped some great links on the itinerary. There's a printable PDF brochure you could share with friends. There's another brochure that Sage put together that has lots of great like informational details. And then there's also a link to reserve a spot on the trip. And just before we open up for questions, I just want to say how excited I am for this trip. I've been putting together trips for a long time, and this is a really special one. So it would just be love for y'all to join us during the holiday season. And, with all these trips, it's always trying to not only make sure we put the best trips together for the group, but also, we don't want to go on a boring itinerary or do the same stuff over and over. So it's always trying to top ourselves. And I think we've done it here. So it's pretty special. I hope y'all will consider joining. Any questions?
Have you met your minimum number of people to register at this point?
I think we have, right, Sage? We're at 10 now, so I think we're pretty much there. And
Yeah.
Okay.
so the trip's happening, and we're going to be at the Henry
Mhm.
Howard Hotel,
Thank you.
of course.
All right, guys, if there aren't any more questions, again, we just want to thank you all so much for coming out and learning more about this amazing trip. We hope to welcome you to New Orleans, or if you're here, we hope to see you on the trip this December. And if you have any questions, again, please reach out. We're always happy to help you however we can. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very
Have a
much.
great one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.